everyone, welcome back to the Rugby Pod. I'm Andy Rowe, Big Jim and Goodey are with me as usual.
Hold on a minute, you're Andy Rowe. You never say that.
I have started to say it. I just think people need to know. People need to know.
I'm Andy Rowe.
Mate,
They know Andy Rowe. They do.
Beer 52 are with us throughout the Six Nations, offering you free beers delivered straight to your door from the very best breweries on the planet. You can get a case of 8 free beers, and there's no minimum commitment. So you can just take the free case, try the beers, see what you think, and you can pause or cancel it at any point. It's perfect to go with your Six Nations viewing as well. All you need to do is go to beer52.com/rugby and cover the postage. That's the word beer, followed by the number 52.com/rugby to get your first case of 8 beers for free. And you'll be supporting the Rugby Pod as well.
And they're Scottish, Andy Rowe. So
Are they?
Yeah, they're a Scottish company, Scottish brand company, distribution, legends, and another good thing to come out of Scotland, I suppose.
Hey, well, it's the only good thing this week, isn't it, Jim? You're not as chipper today, son. You've shaved your head. You got your pants on your head. You got the skid marks showing. How are you, Jim? What's going on?
Firstly, what do you think of the Skynet?
But actually, you look a lot better after 4 or 5 days growth than it did initially.
I went proper Skynet. This is no reflection of Sons. This has got to do with my barber, who is absolutely horrendous. And I was starting to call Beck, the only person that can give a human being mange. Now, I said to her, this can't carry on. My head was so itchy from the different angles that the Manscaped razor, which is meant for your bits, was on my eyebrows and on my head because my other one ain't working. So I ain't blaming Manscaped, I'm blaming Barber Beck. Get it? BB, alliteration, as a rhyme, Skynet, no reflection on Sons. And you're right. I'd say if I looked hard before, I look hard as nails. I've got like a 4-inch scar, 5-inch scar on the side of my head. And I might just keep it just for that because it's a war wound. It's a battle wound. It just shows that I put my head somewhere where arguably it shouldn't have been. You can't put them there anymore. We can't put them there, but you've got to be careful you put your head now. But it's a story. And yeah, it's taken the shine off last week's unbelievable 50-point win against England. It's taken the shine off with a Skynet and a loss at the weekend.
You did, Jim. You did, and I do wonder. Like we've just passed through Valentine's Day weekend, and it's quite interesting actually because you look on social media and you look at Twitter and Instagram, and you know all the boys, loads of lads are forced to put a picture up of their missus, right? Like Andy Rowe partook in it. You know, he was forced to put a picture of his missus up. I wasn't forced. Telling her how much she loves her and all this stuff. Loads of lads have been forced to do it over the weekend. Why haven't you put the picture up of me and you, like telling each other how much we love each other and all this stuff? And Jim, I didn't see a picture of you and Beck. And is it because she shaved your head and made you look like that and gave you mange pre-shaving of the head?
No, it's got nothing to do with that. It's got to do with lockdown again. That's it. That's the only reason why we didn't get a photo put up. I put one of me and Blair Cowan, my old Oos, up there. Of us touching heads Glasgow style on social just to see if it will go viral like the rest of my tweets, but it hasn't. And Beck did ask me, she said, why have you not put a picture showing your love for me on social media? I said, that is the world that we live in now. By you thinking, if I'm going to put a picture of me and you on social media, I love you more. That isn't the case. She said, well, do you love me? And I couldn't say it. I couldn't.
Why?
I couldn't say it.
This is the mother of your 4 children, John.
I've had to shave my head. That's why. I've had to shave my head, and we're asking a million questions at the house. How long is this going to go on for? When are the kids going back to school? When are you going back to work, Beck? When am I going to Ibiza? There's so many questions, and I'm not a Valentine's Day guy, believe it or not. I'm not massively romantic.
No.
Yeah, I'm not. I bought some flowers from Marks and Spencer's on Valentine's Day morning because I felt bad.
What is the most romantic thing you boys have done before?
Andy Rowe, Mr. Good, he's like a topper. Like I saw some stuff on social media. You know, people get these like massive balloons and they bring clowns in when you could, and they bring in people with violins and stuff. That would be Goodey's style. I'm telling you now, he'd go all in. He'd have the loafers on, you'd have the jeggings on, the air would be on point, the bed sores would be wiped down this weekend's Valentine's Day, and you'd go all in, I reckon. Andrew, yes or no?
No, mate, we weren't bothered by it, but I did get a present from my twin girls. It's actually quite nice as a dad when the missus helps our 3-year-old twins make some Valentine's Day cards for me. So I got 3 Valentine's Day cards, one from Olivia, one from Isabella, and one for the good lady. But my favourite thing was the book that I got with it. And we talked a bit about it last week, but as the twins know, I spend a bit of time, and I tweeted about it this week when a stat came out that men managed to hide for 7 hours a year in the toilet just to get some peace and quiet. It ain't 7 hours a year, boys and girls. I reckon it's minimum 7 hours a week, if not.
Or a day. It could be a day.
It could be, right now, it could be a day. But they got me a book that was 52 things to do while you poo, because Daddy likes to go to the bathroom and hide. So that was very romantic.
Have you got the book there?
It's in the toilet, so obviously I'm not doing the podcast from the toilet, but I could get an extract for you later on. We might have to pause the pod to go and get it and on the way through. But romantic. There's no need for it. All these men like you, Andy Rowe, declaring your love for your missus and show. Is it an ownership thing? Is she owning you?
There was balloons. There was hot balloons on his social.
No. I get approached a lot on social media, and I've got to let the girls know that I'm taken.
You're taken, yeah.
My word! Well, I didn't see Louis Rees-Zammit post anything. I don't know whether he's taken, but there's rumour out there that he is dating Paul Scholes' daughter. And
that's not a rumour. That's not a rumour, Jim.
Is it true?
That is the truth.
It is truth. There's an unbelievable picture of Paul Scholes on social media that I've seen do the rounds. I don't know what that's got to do with Louis Rees-Zammit, but he was meant to come on the podcast today, actually, talking of romance. We can jump back to mine. Basically, I'm not that romantic, but if I was married or associated with Louis Rees-Zammit, I'd be the most romantic human being you've ever seen. But he was meant to come on the pod, and then he's been blocked, as it were.
Who's he been blocked by, Jim? Because I had a few messages with him congratulating him, and he thanked me personally. He said, Andy, you've been the catalyst for this, from that tweet 18 months or so ago when you asked whether I was English or Welsh, and that was the catalyst that drove him through. And we've got our revenge. I'm a quarter Welsh, courtesy of my amazing grandfather, rest in peace, Grandpa Harold, who was born and bred in Pontypridd. And we beat the Scots. We did it. We beat the Scots.
We did.
Louis Rees-Zammit, two tries. Oh, you're Welsh now as well, are you? 2 tries, hell of a finish to win it. What a legend. What a lovely bloke as well. He wants it to come on the pod. He messaged me over Twitter, privately, obviously, because he's big time. He doesn't want to leak it to the masses. But his mates listened to it, and he was blocked by the WRU from coming on the podcast. Real shame.
It's my fault.
All I want to know. Yeah, it is probably your fault, Jim, to be fair, because you bagged the Welsh for a long, long time. And they're waiting for your apology today. But all I want to ask him is about Scholesy. And was he at that party in COVID when Scholesy had his daughters, all the mates round or whatever? And there was a big hoo-ha about that. And has he seen the picture of Scholesy with his willy hanging out?
And how cold was it? How cold was it that day? I'll answer it. -10. That's how cold it was.
It'd be hilarious to ask him that. But yeah, it's a real shame. Louis Rees-Zammit wanted to come on. The WRU blocked him. I blame Jim Hamilton because you've hammered the Welsh for a long time. And now they are 2 from 2, Jim, and potentially on the way to a Grand Slam. How's your Grand Slam going? You talked about it last week.
It's not about Grand Slams. It's not about Grand Slams.
Oh, really?
Yeah, just on to the next. Just want to get better. Just want to get better week in, week out. Just want to get better. Just want to improve and just want to get better.
How dull is that line that everyone's spitting out at the minute about just want to, it started off with fast. Just want to get better every week in training, get your heads down, work hard. Intensity at training makes us better week on week, improvement. Now, that's all anyone says. How dull?
What happened to Scotland, Jim?
We looked all right, I thought. I think there was parts of it that we looked very good. A couple of things, well, more than a couple of things, a few things. We definitely didn't have the energy at the start of the game as we did against England, right? So that was kind of glaringly obvious. And there was a few things around that sapped the energy. Giving Wales... Yeah, well, it's my fault. It's my fault because I basically Judas the Welsh line out on here last week. Nothing to do with Ken Owens, all Alan Wynne-Jones. And they've rocked up and they're mauling Scotland to the cowsheds and back. So that's one part of the game. The scrum as well. I think there was a penalty quite early on at scrum time. Just sapped the energy from the Scotland lads. But still, we'll fast forward half time. We're winning 17-3 at half time.
Well, so what you on about, Jim?
Well, I'm getting onto it. I'm building the storyboard. I'm building the emotion up to it. And I tweeted about it. Of course, I've been on my phone way too much this weekend, by the way. I think my screen time on Saturday was over 7.5 hours. But look, I'm an influencer. I've got to be out there communicating, putting out my messages and putting out fires as well with some of the stuff that I put out. But from a Scotland perspective, I thought we were going to win that game comfortably. My match point predictor didn't say comfortably, it said 8 points or something. But as the games unfolded in that first half, I'm like, we could win with a bonus point here comfortably. And we go into half time, 17 points to 3. I think it was that anyway.
It was, yeah.
And I tweeted about the kicking game, going back to my tweet. It was a completely different layer for this Scotland team from what we've seen. And a lot of people bagging the kicking stuff. Goodey, we've spoken about it. You've got an opinion on it. But the way that we kicked off 9, off Finn, off Hoggy was world class at the weekend. And I just thought, we're on for the Grand Slam here, lads. We're having it. The air ain't coming off. It might have already been off at that point, but the air's growing back, and we're on for a Grand Slam. And as we know, the red card, which is a lot of debate, and we can talk about that in a minute, but that had a huge influence on the outcome of the game, and still could have won at the end. What about that tap tackle by Owen Watkin?
Oh, mate, no one's given him enough credit about that, because if you watch it, Louis Rees-Zammit slips over before he taps him. So he
might have still caught him on his hands and knees. Though.
Well, yeah, he was that good and that quick. He may have got up and back. No, because Duhan van der Merwe has wheels as well. So Owen Watkin, you watch his work rate as well. And it's quite interesting. Coaches look at this sort of stuff. First and foremost, and we'll get into a bit more detail about the game, but what about the magic from Finn Russell to put Duhan van der Merwe down the line? Like, the offload was just redonkulous. Like, backdoor, side door, call it what you will, it was ridiculous. And then just watch anyone, I just ask you, look at the replay, watch Owen Watkin's work rate compared to a lot of those other Welsh players in the area. So Halaholo or Holoholo, I'll just call him Holy Holo. Halaholo, he is jogging. Watkin is giving it full beans. He's giving it the full Jim Hamilton, that's Mr. Gilmore's jacket, giving it absolutely everything, and tackles him. I mean, it was like there was a sniper in the stands, shot him with the calf. Unbelievable work rate. And that wins the game, because Tipperick is trying his hardest to get back. He doesn't get there. Guarantee he doesn't get there. And that's under the sticks. Scotland, the Grand Slam still on, boys. But Owen Watkin should just be given the freedom of Wales right now. Yeah,
that was class. And that was the big part of the game, like you said, Goodey, that people are talking about. Obviously, the other part of it is the red card, and we'll come on to that. You know what I liked about Wales, and again, I might have not belittled them, but not talked them up as much as I'm about to now. As the game's going on, and Scotland going into the Welsh line, it looked like the Wales team of old when they won Grand Slams, and Wales of old defensively, they looked so comfortable, apart from that last play, which was phenomenal by Owen Watkin. But I mean, Wales 2 from 2. What can you say from a Scotland perspective? Like, arguably, if we had 15 men on the field, it might have been very different. But as we've seen at the top level, 14 players at any level, especially at the top level, are you going to struggle to win a game?
There's 2 massive talking points, isn't there, around it? And obviously the red card, which we haven't touched on yet. But then when Scotland get held up, turned over on their try line, some people said they should have gone for the 3 points. There was 2 opportunities to go for the 3 points. They didn't. That's game one then. That's game one then, isn't it? If they score the try, it's game one. Hindsight's an easy thing, isn't it? I'm thinking in those conditions you should take the 3. And I nearly tweeted about it, but then I thought, because they're going to score anyway. And unfortunately they didn't. And Wales go on to win it. The finish from Rees-Zammit was ridiculous. Obviously the major talking point is the red card. And, there's so many people around the game with different opinions, both in the game, both fans, and there's all of a sudden there's loads of these people with names like Gary 126946432 on Twitter that think they've got the right opinion all the time. They just go out abusing people. It's all these people with numbers at the end of their name that are just obviously bots or haven't got the bollocks to actually put their full name and credentials on their Twitter handle, and they're the ones that dish out all the abuse. It's a red card. Like, letter of the law these days, it is a red card, isn't it?
Oh, 100%. And the Twitter thing's an interesting thing because I'm not hugely outspoken on there, but this weekend I have been on a few things, and like you said, it's just, I don't know whether it's because people are bored or what, or they're watching the game, or they think that there's a negativity behind some of our comments when we put them out there. We're obviously well placed in understanding the game, understanding the laws, understanding the interpretations of a lot of parts of the games, right? When it comes to these red card scenarios, everyone knows, or who'd listened to this, knows my take on it. Like, I don't want to necessarily see that as a red card because the game comes to an end then. You may as well call it. How many games do you see where you go down to 14 men?
But you say that though, he didn't though. Hoggy scores that try to put Scotland back in front down to 14 men, and Scotland can still win the game. It was only a bit of magic by Rees-Zammit, lovely ball by Halaholo on the edge to put them away, that they end up winning the game. So it wasn't like it all of a sudden became, a definite result that Scotland were definitely going to lose because Fagerson's got sent off. Now, same the week before for Wales. Ireland could have won that game. So certain times, I completely agree with you, but it didn't affect the game and make it a guaranteed win for Wales.
That's why they won the game. I don't think Wales would have won.
No, I'm not saying they would have won, but what I'm saying is it wasn't like a foregone conclusion as soon as he got sent off that Wales were going to go ahead and win the game. It was
because Wales are going to be horrible here because Wales aren't as good.
Oh, mate, why do you horrible? They beat Scotland. They beat
Scotland and they beat Ireland, and they're on for a Grand Slam. So it isn't being horrible, but we should dissect Xander Fagerson's red card with an open cloth because going back to my point, in years being a year or two gone by, we're probably sat at home thinking, there's no way that's a red card. That is way a red card now, unfortunately. And me and Xander were messaging after the game as well, just, saying, look, mate, unfortunate for you, you've been class. I don't think there was any malice in it. That is one of them rugby incidents that happen. Arguably, if Wyn Jones doesn't get rolled over in the breakdown, he might not have hit his head, but he did hit his head with force, at distance, with a closed arm. And there's loads of, this is the thing where the game is now, and we've all become keyboard warriors, and we're sat there. What about this one? What about this one? What about that? It doesn't matter about what about this one, what about that. We're looking at that, and that's what's been highlighted by the TMO. And when it unfolded, I was like, we got off, we won that. I didn't know that he connected with the head, but normally with the force generated and the way that Wyn Jones went down and did he dive, we don't know without speaking to him or him admitting it. But the framework of the game now and looking after players' heads, you can't do that now. Whether or not it's an accident or not, we'll reiterate. You go into a breakdown with a closed arm, with a run-up, flying into it, and your shoulder connects with an opposition player's head, it's a red card. It's not even up for debate. There is no debate around it. And this was the tweet that went out there, and unfortunately for Xander, who's not a dirty player, he's off, boss.
How good was Louis Rees-Zammit?
Quick, good-looking, young, fair play.
He uses Manscaped as well.
Without a doubt. If there was ever a poster boy now of Welsh rugby, and we've seen a few gone by, I was going to say Jamie Roberts of old, but arguably not more, Lee Halfpenny.
George North.
George North. They produce world-class players, don't they, who are 10 out of 10 looking and speed and a lot of other things, and he's that bloke. Let's start at the fact that he was 20 only a couple of months ago. 20 years old. And he's rocked onto the scene with no fans, which must be difficult. Imagine if there was fans there and he's doing what he's doing on the wing with his speed. I'll tell you what impresses me most about him is not the rapido, which is quite impressive, but, we're all quick, so it's not a huge thing. Yeah, we're all quick, Imagine he does 100 metres in, 10.3?
Probably, yeah.
I'll probably do it in about 13 seconds. It's not a 3 seconds difference.
Mate, you're not sub 15, mate.
I genuinely, when I did 100 metres, I did it in about 14 seconds, maybe just under.
Well, ironically, you talk about speed. Stevie Ferris was going through his phone at the weekend, and he sent me a video, and I'll just rewind him. sent me the video of our 100 metres race at Eden Park when I
was
absolutely
ill.
pulled your pants down.
I was ill.
You are not sub 15 seconds, pal. We all know.
Okay, well, let's say 16 seconds. I'm still 6 seconds slower than him, which ain't a lot. But it's his work off the ball defensively. It's defence. Watch him defend. Watch his work rate in and around the breakdowns, off the ball, on the kick chases. That's what impresses me, that he's not just come onto the scene and he's rapid and that's it. And as we know, there's so many more layers that you need, but there's no denying it. It's undeniable that finish was world class. It looked like he was jogging when he rebounded the ball from the chip. That's how quick he is. Yeah,
he's proper wheels. And it's ironic you say that, Jim, about his work rate, because people were kind of pointing the finger at him a little bit for Stuart Hogg's try when Lee Halfpenny's turned and fumbled it in the first half. I think people, when you get around to the real nitty gritty of positional play in the back three, he's probably 3 or 4 meters away from being in the perfect position. But again, he's young, he's learning the game, and Halfpenny turned and dropped on the ball. It's not actually Halfpenny's job to get back and turn on the ball when he's supposed to be up in the defensive line making that last hit. So Halfpenny did exceptionally well, but then on top of it, spilt the ball. And Rees-Zammit was nearly there as well. So it was a collection of just slightly being out of position and the error from Lee Halfpenny. But yeah, he's ridiculous. And he plays against the funky chicken, Johnny May, in a couple of weeks, if they're both selected. And that is wheels on wheels on wheels, isn't it? Both playing at Gloucester now. You're reading some of the stuff in the press that they're probably both looking forward to playing against each other. Louis Rees-Zammit, every time he plays and has played for Gloucester and now in a Wales shirt, he's so exciting when he's got the ball, just because he's so rapid.
He does something, doesn't he? Every game he plays, he does something.
And he puts the fear of God up defenders because, like you said, he doesn't even look like he's trying hard. Like, you picture when you try and run as fast as you can, or when I used to be able to run and try and, like, your facial expressions, absolutely hanging. Everyone, but Louis Rees-Zammit, his hair doesn't move. He just glides ridiculously quick. His hair doesn't move, and he's just a smiley, happy rugby player that has got wheels to burn. So, exciting times for him, for Wales. Josh Adams, does he come back into the mix for the England game in a couple of weeks' time after his COVID slip? They've got options, haven't they? And Louis Rees-Zammit has been given an opportunity and has taken it with both hands.
Well, something that might speed you guys up a little bit, packed coffee. Have you guys received your package yet from Packed Coffee?
It was actually amazing, I'll be honest. And it's difficult sometimes when we talk about stuff on here that we've been given for free and we feel compelled to talk them up. Lovely coffee. Normally I'd go for me Nespresso pods or a posh coffee, Wellington coffee in Edinburgh. Costs about £3.20, but it's worth it because it's with oat milk, and oat milk's more expensive than cow's milk, apparently.
Mate, what about the smell when you open it up? That's my favourite thing about a coffee. When you get the coffee beans, the ground coffee, you just open the packet and just take in the aroma. Lovely.
Well, Packed Coffee delivers flexible coffee plans to your door. They're all about coffee without compromise. That means they only source the best coffee and pay coffee farmers an average of 55% above fair trade baseline. It's not your typical subscription that comes on the first of every month. You can get coffee whenever you want, and you can pause, cancel, or change your plan at any time online. There's no hidden postage charges, and if you order before 1 p.m. on Monday to Friday, your order will be with you the very next day. It's also letterbox friendly, so you don't need to be at home waiting for your coffee. And we've got a discount code as well. So you get your first bag from just £1.95. Just head to packcoffee.com. That's PACT coffee.com. Create your flexible coffee plan. Enter the code RUGBY at the checkout and get speciality coffee through your letterbox. The code is valid when you create a Packed Coffee plan and only for new customers. So go and check them out. England 41-18 over Italy. Goodey, what'd you make of it?
Hey, mate, we're back. We're above Scotland in the league table, standings, call it what you will, mate. Eddie Jones, just delivers, mate. 41-point victory. 41. No, I can't even get that excited about it. I mean,
well, Eddie and Owen were pretty happy afterwards. But
yeah, they're going to be, right? You put 41 points on any team after a defeat the week before, and the negativity around the performance. You could see there was a mentality shift in how we were trying to attack. We weren't very good at it at times, but at least the intent was there. I mean, the disappointing thing for me is you play in Italy at home. You've got players in the squad like Randall, like Adogwu, Ellis Genge, I thought you played quite well the week before. You drop him and bring in Mako, who hasn't played. Clearly, Eddie Jones is no interest in evolving and giving others opportunities in the Six Nations. He's got a mindset of, I just want to win the Six Nations. I've lost to Scotland. The only way I'm going to win the Six Nations is to win every other game. So I'm just going to go with type and what I know. And he picked a team, brought George Ford back in. He, did reasonably well. I put some width on the ball. The big thing for me is Owen Farrell's really happy about the performance. I thought he was garbage, and I don't want to be horrible. He's holding England back. He's playing 12. He dropped the ball a few times. Yes, he's the captain. Eddie's not going to make any changes. Let's be honest. He does what he wants to do, no matter how much we beat the drum. And everyone said it around other players like Sam Simmons. Is he going to listen to anyone? No chance. There's still a massive hangover, I believe, and you saw that in the performance around the World Cup in 2019 and the final. You think back to the semi-final and the quarter-final against Australia and New Zealand, the intensity, the accuracy, the attacking intent that we showed in those games compared to where we are now, we're quite sluggish. I think Italy were hard done by the ref as well at times on a few things. But
don't get me started on that.
We'll chat about them as well, because there were a couple of things that were clear, talking points. But the intent was there for England. The accuracy wasn't. They're still shell-shocked, probably from losing to Scotland last week. But also, I just think within the group, there's a fear. And they won't say anything. But Eddie Jones rules with fear, doesn't he? And then Farrell's your captain. It's like they're just looking for someone to tell them what to do. And when Farrell's your captain and not playing particularly well, he doesn't add a lot in attack for me at the minute. We saw that against Scotland where Ollie Lawrence waited 60 odd minutes to get a pass and then
gets dropped.
And then this weekend, the forward Farrell axis is back. Dan Robson comes off the bench, makes a massive impact instead of Ben Youngs. But we're never going to know anything because he's just going to keep picking who he wants to pick, and that'll be the usual mob, which is prerogative, but it doesn't stop us from being able to discuss it and debate it. And we go to Wales next up, and you could see him picking his usual team and us doing a job over Wales down there, which will kind of justify what he wants to do. So we're allowed to debate it. There was more intent from England, but it was inaccurate. And Italy, they were never going to win the game, let's be honest, but there were a few things that went against them on the day.
If I played like Faz played, he would never speak to me ever again. I played half as bad against Newcastle when he was on holiday in Dubai, and he ain't spoke to me since. He ain't spoke to me since that day because he thought I was shit. And that was it, full stop.
Well,
Worst I've seen him play for England. And that is a real... Is it a worry or a concern? Because he'd normally back it up. If he's been shit one week, he will rock up the next week because he's a world-class player and it means a lot to him. The worrying thing for me is that he had a poor game against Scotland. So you're thinking the game against Italy, he's coming in, he's like, right, I'm going to prove everyone wrong. They're having it. And they did have it off the ball. And
what do you mean? The ref had it as well in both ears.
Well, you saw the interaction with Mike Adamson as well. And we can talk about the referees. And I like Mike Adamson. I've commentated on loads of games, Edinburgh, loads of games for Glasgow, where he's been refereeing, Scottish referee, and he's been standout performances. But I look at that game at the weekend, and there's loads that we can talk about that have come from it. But just going back to England's performance, there's nothing in that I'm like, that would worry a big team. And I mean that with all due respect to Italy, who I thought Italy looked all right. And this is what I mean. And we can come to the Twitter thing about my comments around Johnny May's try, and it shouldn't have been a try. And the reason why I think that, because I think Italy were hard done by on that and a few occasions. And a lot of people are calling for Italy to be thrown out. And people are like, yeah, but it's not to do with Johnny May's try or a yellow card not going to Farrell. It's to do with the fact they've lost 26 or whatever games it is in a row. I was like, yeah, but they're going to be judged on performances, aren't they? Because they're a young team now. They started that game incredibly well. I thought they looked really good in attacks and good players. But I've been in a Scotland team before where the referee can take the wind out your sail. And if you're going to win a game and upset a team, the bounce the ball needs to go your way sometimes. If you're not an England, a Wales and Ireland, Scotland, New Zealand, South Africa, Australia, I know. I wouldn't put Australia in that mix either as well. But if you're a top team, like you play well or whatever, you don't need the bounce of the ball. But when we've seen Italy beat France, for example, in recent years, or they had that win against South Africa, like in recent years as well,
in Italy,
you need everything to go your way, and part of that is decisions around the referee. And I just thought, I looked at that game and I felt for Italy, because you can see how hard they're trying. You can see that they've picked some young players, and it wasn't the bounce of the ball. They just didn't get the rub of the referee. You wonder whether that's Mike Adamson's inexperience, Joy Neville as a TMO, not having the experience to call it and to kind of tell him, no, this is the case. And it's easy, again, when you sit at home and you're on your phone and you're on Twitter, it's easy to pass judgment. I can't imagine how difficult it is, but it's our job, it's my job, to pass opinion and pass judgment. It's not me being horrible. Like, I'm backing up what I'm saying with some of it. I mean, for me, Faz's hit on Varney, it is a penalty at least.
It's late, yeah, very late.
He's angry for some reason, so there's no need for him to do that. He's whacked him in the back. He's gone down with his head, or is he holding his head? Well, that means he's connected with his head then. So if he's going down with his head, he's connected with his head. And what they go back and look at it, don't they, to see if it's high, Goodey.
By him going down with his head, are you saying that he was trying to fake an injury to try and get away with the fact that he's belted him in the face or not?
Only he will know. But my point is that...
Are you happy to put your name to that, Jim?
Put my name to it. Maybe don't put my name to it, because I don't want to say the player's going down injury, and he's hard, he's a northerner. But you look at that, so from Farrell's perspective, or from the viewer's perspective, the referee and Joy Neville on TMO, he's connected with his head. So it's a head-on-head collision, because he ain't hit his knee. So if you go on Farrell's expression, Farrell was hitting late, high, with his head, on head. So in the framework, that'd be a red card, wouldn't it?
They're saying that it was chest on back. So his initial contact point was with his chest. And that's what World Rugby are trying to outlaw, where the chest on chest tackles or chest on back tackles, those upright tackles, always lead to a head on head, or pretty much always lead to a head collision somewhere down the line, which is the reason behind all this framework. So I'm not saying it was a red card offence at all. It was definitely late. And I think it's all around it's experience and the wording. So where Joy Neville's buzzed into Mike Adamson and said, oh, we need to look at this, she hasn't said, and she perhaps should have said and led the conversation around, okay, out of the framework, we don't think it's a nasty challenge. It's not a penalty for height wise, because they felt that it was chest on back. But she should have then said, but it is a late tackle. And that's the argument, in fact. And the 2 points about it, we'll come back to Johnny Mays in a minute. England were 15-8 up going into the last play of the game of the first half. So England were 15-8 up going into the last play of the first half. Johnny Mays scores that try to go 20 points to 8 up. Italy get a penalty in the second half, 20 points to 11. Anthony Watson, when he intercepts it, is 20 points to 11. He goes the length, scores under the sticks, 27-11. If it gets chalked off, which it should have done because it was a late tackle, Italy have got a very simple penalty there to kick it goal to make it 20 points to 14. Now, I'm not saying Italy would win the game, but when Jim's talking about the points of not getting the rub of the green, judging on performance, that scoreline could have been a bit different. England were always going to win it, right? But if it's 20 points to 14, instead of it being 27 points to 11, and that flick of the try because of Farrell's action, you're looking at Italy are in the game with 55 minutes gone. And so I think the wording around where Joy Neville didn't perhaps lead Mike Adamson and didn't say it's late, as well as let's look at a dangerous tackle. That's why Mike Adamson just went, for me, it's chest on back. There's,
forgot about it.
Yeah. And that's the big thing. But you go back to Johnny May's try, your interaction, and this is what I love about Nigel Owens. He's not scared to give an opinion and back it up with the rules and the laws and how things are refereed in the heat of battle. We've all got opinions, but he is the king of the opinion around what is a referee decision and what's right and wrong. And it is borderline around the try, whether he jumps the tackle first or he's diving to score a try.
What about the interaction, Goody, on Twitter when people are trying to talk about how you dive into a swimming pool and dive off a diving board? And it's like, for me, when I put it out there, I'm not looking to like talk badly about the game or to try and build some controversy around it. Like you said, it's an opinion. In my opinion, right? But it's not even in my opinion. I think it is that obvious that he's jumped the tackler that he's jumped it, he hasn't dived. You know, you look at James Lowe, if he would have dived over the French defenders at the weekend for his try, he probably would have got over if he dived in from 5 metres out. If Louis Rees-Zammit could dive from the halfway line, and he might get over the try line.
Yeah, true.
Like, I know we're having a little bit of a joke about it, so I put it out there, and it did go viral. And Nigel Owens did back me up, and a load of people are coming back. Well, where is the laws? It doesn't say in 9.3 of the law book or the rule book, or laws is laws, rules is rules, as Michael Holford said, in 9.1 and 9.3. But for me, it's obvious. Like, you can't, like, otherwise you get players jumping over rucks from now on. Like, and say that they're diving. And of course, like, you do a swan dive. If I do a swan dive, I'm going high, tits out, hoping the tits pull me down and I don't hit my belly first. But how is Spandino, how's he meant to tackle Johnny May?
Well, he tries, doesn't he?
Well, he goes in.
The pictures, he's trying to wrap his arm. Johnny May's jumped over.
There's no one there. So for the people listening, it ain't a big deal, massively. Like, it's just another thing that was missed. You can't do it.
It is a big deal if you're Italy. That's 15-8 at half time.
But that's the thing, because it is Italy. That's like, people are just like, oh, it's Italy. It looks amazing. Undeniably, it looks absolutely class. People are like saying, like the NFL, you're allowed to jump over the tacklers in an NFL. NBA, you jump in. In NBA, you don't dive, you jump. So, oh, mate, it's the joys of being on Twitter and Nigel Owens. Nigel Owens was smart, actually, because he came on about 11 o'clock at night.
Couple of red wines.
Well, everyone's asleep, isn't they? Well, mostly everyone who's been on Twitter all day is absolutely bored by because of their eyes. They're seeing like 10 iPhones or whatever phone you've got. They can't see because they've been on the phone the whole day. And he came in and maybe with what Nigel said, he said it's the law. There isn't a law that says you can't jump over a tackler, but there is. Oh, there is. Okay. Well,
yeah, there is a law that says you cannot jump a tackle. But then there's a fine line between jumping a tackle and diving to score a try, and that's where the grey area is. So in the field of play, you cannot jump a tackle, or you cannot prevent someone from attempting to make a tackle by jumping. And that's where the grey area is. And like you said, Johnny May, is he jumping that tackle because he didn't want to get hit, or is he thinking I'm diving here like an absolute hero to get some headlines and score a wonder try and get all the pictures galore? Because he's got unbelievable spring in his step, right, to do that. But he jumps first over a tackle.
Well, I'm saying because he didn't want to take the tackle. But
you're horrible.
Like, what would you do? What would you do if that was a Scotland winger? Well, I was mates with Johnny. I was mates with Johnny before I put that tweet out. I played with him at Gloucester. Do you know what I mean? I want to see him score an unbelievable try. So it's not about me hating on the English. I'm a quarter English. If we win the Six Nations, I'm English. So from Johnny May's perspective, I'm just giving my opinion, which has obviously divided an opinion, and for people to get a little bit aggressive out there on social. Loving it.
Didn't you mention something about the laws at the breakdown as well after Jack Willis got injured?
Oh, I mean, Jim's been all over Twitter this week, hasn't he? Just all this and all that. Just controversy, Jim.
This is coming from a man who's rolled many a man out of the breakdown before, because when they were jackling that low, I couldn't get that low at the end of my career. So I'd get in there and I'd roll them over. And I'd absolutely 100% believe you shouldn't be allowed to do that. And Seb Negri, who's a friend of the show, and I've had a bit of interaction with him over the weekend as well, and I thought he was incredibly good. Obviously, it's the nature of rugby, isn't it, to put a tweet out and a post out just wishing Jack, and there was no malice meant. Seb Negri, for me, he's done everything he can in the laws or the framework of the game and watching how he perceives them to get Jack Willis out. And again, the breakdown is such a difficult thing to referee, because what are the laws around that? Like, can you clear a player out? when you're lying on your back. No, but people do all the time. Like, it happens all the time. And you talk about player safety. And obviously the head has to be paramount. We know the reasons why around that. But my goodness me, the damage, and you heard the scream.
Yeah, horrible.
The damage you can do. So it's, it needs to be.
It does need to be changed. And you look at the evolution of the clear out, right? So you go back to our days of playing. You remember being coached by Wellesley. And Wellesley used to say the hardest bit of your body is your head. So fly your head in there to clean them out. That's when you could do that under the laws back in the day. So you'd be aiming under his chin, and this is what we were coached as players, and every club would do the same. So it's not a big hoo-ha around John Wells. Every player was coached this way. Get your head underneath their head. They'll soon bounce off the ball. I remember in training towards the back end of my career at a club where we were having to be dummies around lying over a sausage bag and getting your neck rolled. And I'm sat there going,
it was called the neck roll. That was it.
And I'm sat there at training going, this ain't me. I promise you, I'm never going to put myself in that position on the field. Why do I need to be...
Goodey, put your head down. Put your head up. He's looking up. Put your head down.
And I'd be trying to roll off the bag before they even got there. But then that gets outlawed. And now the next thing is, and players are still being coached, and they're allowed to be coached this because it's within the laws of the game. The body roll, the croc roll of the body, which, as we've seen, horrific outcome for Jack Willis at the weekend. Feel really sorry for him, as the whole of World Rugby does, I'm sure. To hear the scream, the noise that came with it as well from his knee, after battling back from 18 months out from doing his knee on Allianz Park. Is it still called Allianz Park? It's just called Park now, or Stone X Park, or whatever it is, at Saracens. That wasn't from a roll at a ruck. That was him going across and trying to make a tackle. But I've seen him. I interviewed him loads of times at Wasps in the Andy Good suite over that 18 months when he was out injured. He's the most positive guy, and we've seen a couple of tweets that he's put out already that he's going to come back stronger and better. And we just wish him all the best. But Jim, you were dead right. There needs to be a law amendment change so that you cannot croc roll the body like that, because knees are getting blown up all over the shop. And that is all to do with the power of the player now. Both the jackler and Jack Willis, I don't want to blow his trumpet too much. I'm going to say he's up there in the top 5 jacklers in the world, without a shadow of a doubt, the way he jackals over the ball. The strength of those guys over the ball means that coaches are still trying to look for other ways of trying to get them off the ball, which the croc roll is an obvious one. So does it need to be outlawed completely? Then hopefully we wouldn't see some of the serious injuries that we've been seeing.
Well, let's move on to Dublin now, where France won for the first time in a decade, and the celebrations were pretty big.
They started off the game, and let's be honest, the way they started off the game, and then the trip came from Bernard Leroux, and those little things you're like, oh, it's just so French away from home. And then they back it up with another bit of just so French. The try, led by Dupont's worldie of an offload, was ridiculous. And that is so French because they've always got that in them. But then you look at the second half and it was just tactically and in terms of just the desire at the end, defensively, Ireland had a hell of a lot of possession. But the French barred up time after time after time and deserved their victory. It wasn't pretty at times, but they had the 2 bits of class and quality to win the game. Ireland obviously scored off a line out, a bit of a lucky tap down when France turned the Ireland line out over. And then he shoots down and scores from about 22 metres out. But in reality, this French team is a proper team, isn't it?
They didn't even get out of third gear either. And that's the worrying thing, I think, when you look at any of the teams that need to play them and think when fans back in stadiums and they're at home in Paris and they've got the World Cup obviously there in a couple of years. I love the look of this French team. I think they look fitter than they've ever looked. The obvious statement is around their defence and physicality. Best player, spoke about him last week, Antoine Dupont. Phenomenal, spoken about him every week, every time he's played. For me, Ireland's a worry. They don't look very good at all, do they? They don't. I'm not being horrible, but I had them down to win. And I thought, right, you're going to beat France at home, get a bit of a bounce back, but I didn't see anything where I was like, yeah, Ireland look all right.
Yeah, I mean, losing some of the key players that they lost before the game, and then you're playing France, who are undoubtedly, over the last sort of 18 months since the World Cup, one of the best teams in the world at the minute. South Africa haven't played, let's be honest. New Zealand have been a bit up and down. This French team are proper, aren't they? England have, obviously won the Six Nations last year, but you're looking at an exciting team with, further growth and an impact that a coach has had. And we talked about it with Shaun Edwards. They've always had the flair, but they've never always had the substance around the fundamentals of the game. And, at top international level, defence and desire are right up there in terms of lists of importance. And yeah, I mean, undoubtedly ridiculous talent, but they've got a willingness and a desire to work for each other as well. Gregory Aldry, again.
He was all right, wasn't he?
Olivon in the back row as well, just redonkulous.
Their modern day back rows, like that's, I know, again, stating the obvious. French have always had tall, rangy back rows who could jump in the line out, but look at their output as well, in terms of their carrying, defensively, off the ball. Them two, they're two world-class back rows.
How much pressure is on Andy Farrell now? Was that French side that good, or should Ireland fans be disappointed with how things are going under his leadership?
I think it's fine margins, right? So you look at the first game, Omani gets sent off, and there's things that have transpired against them, right? So the red card, they had opportunities to beat Wales. Then you play in France, they were in the game. I know France built up a bit of a lead, but they fought their way back in, and they made some changes off the bench that added impetus. Is he under pressure? No, he's not under pressure for his job because he's got a 4-year contract, and he goes to the World Cup. Everyone knows that Ireland, what they've done over the last few World Cup cycles is they've peaked in the middle of the World Cup, haven't they? You think back to Joe Schmidt era, they were dominant. Was it 2017? They dominated the All Blacks. They won a Grand Slam and all these things, and then they always get to a World Cup and they've underperformed. I remember I said it. I was speaking to the boys when pre-World Cup 2019 they were in Portugal. I was on holiday, belly out by the pool. Sexton's next to me with his dad bod as well, belly out by the pool. And I said to his wife, I said,
smoking.
Yeah, a couple of Marlboro menthols or whatever. And I said to his wife, I said, "Are you going out to Japan?" And she's like, "Oh, all the kids, and hopefully." I said, "I don't know whether to book it yet because we've never made a semi-final." I'm like, "You're definitely getting to the semi this year. I'm telling you now." What did I know? Well, of course they didn't. They didn't book their tickets. They didn't go out, I don't think. But it's, does he need to make changes? His job's safe because it's a 4-year cycle. They ain't going to change him now and get someone else in when they've backed him and he's been in the system for quite a few years. Same with Pivac. Look at Pivac now. People were calling for his head 6 months ago, weren't they? And he hardly had any time. You need to be given time. And it's a natural cycle as if you need a change after the World Cup if you haven't done that well.
And you need to see fans as well. I think once you get fans in the stadium, I don't think you can judge any man or woman having to play sport with no fans, because I think people are dealing with it differently. So I think judge them on full stadium in 5 years' time.
And get Cooney in as well.
Okay, let's have a look at the Premiership now. It was finally confirmed on Friday that there'll be no relegation this season.
Told you.
It'll be a 13-team league next season.
Well, the good news is for you, Jim. The Saracens won their first game in about 3 years at the weekend.
Yeah, I didn't see it, but I'm sure it's a big one.
They beat the Doncaster Knighters.
They beat the Doncaster Cowboys, didn't they?
Yeah, I mean, it was always going to happen, wasn't it? This year especially. And looking at the league, looking at the way that the points are being distributed around the COVID cancellations. Last year, in reality, Saracens were relegated, so actually the COVID point system didn't have an impact on relegation. I think the big worry around Premiership rugby, and there's always debate and points and talking points, was whatever happened this year, and we've seen it. I think Northampton have probably won more games, and this might be a stat that I'm just chucking out there, so it might not be fully right, but Northampton have won, I think, as many games via COVID as they have by playing a game of rugby. And I think they're sitting in 5th in the league now. So the flip side of it, Gloucester haven't had any games cancelled. They can't win a game for love nor money. So they're sitting bottom. But the big worry for Premiership rugby was if a team got relegated this year, and there was obviously an impact of COVID around that with the cancellation of games, the club may very well go bust. In terms of the lack of funds at the minute coming through the gates on match day, the deficit that the pandemic has created around the clubs, in terms of them being able to monetize match day, etc., etc. So the fear was losing the club financially forever. So it makes sense to do it for a year. Again, Jim, you're probably the same as me. You want to see it for a year, but then we need to have promotion and relegation in the Premiership to make it, a product that people want to watch. I know BT Sport, who are the rights holders to it at the minute, have just signed a new deal. They're adamant that they want relegation because it puts bums on seats in stadiums and viewing figures on the TV, because of the jeopardy of the amount of games, especially towards the back end of the season, where there's so much involved with it. And I've played in those games. They're amazing to play in. Nervous as anything, but
I've never played in them.
The atmosphere is, when I was at Worcester, knowing that you need to beat this team and you're definitely staying up, it's a great feeling. It's like you won the league.
Well, Bath won away at Sale and Gloucester got to within a point of leaders at Bristol. So do you think maybe the news had a bit of an effect on those players and those teams?
I can't believe Bath beat Sale. I can't believe it. It must have been that arousing speech that Hoops gave a couple of weeks ago that just brought them in. It just came in late. It took them 2 weeks to just absorb the shirt presentation of the lads, which was just so inspiring. It just aroused me as well as the team. And I didn't see that. Alex Anderson did say to me, though, he said, you'll get a spike in energy for a couple of weeks. He said, and then it'll be back to normality. So I did not see Bath beating Sale. They were winning the majority of the game, weren't they, as well?
Comfortably as well.
Yeah, I followed it online. I did watch the Gloucester Bristol's game, but very surprised that Bath beat Sale. But there we go. Very surprised of all we've seen for the last 12 months in life.
Yeah, and we've said that, haven't we? You're going to see, with the amount of games that are back to back this season, because of the truncated start to it and how they've squeezed the season in. There's no rest weekends, right? So there's no, being able to rotate your top players and then you go and play in the Premiership Cup. It's all about week to week to week in the Premiership, and you are going to see sometimes that people's juices aren't flowing as highly as they should, and that was certainly the case with Sale at the weekend. Fair play to Bath. We've given them a bit of stick here, but they rocked up, and you watch actually the highlights and watch the game itself. They performed really well. Tom Dunn ain't the best looking bloke, but he's pretty hard, I'm saying.
He's a good player, he is. And then Gloucester, just a quick line on them. Gloucester, you were beating Bristol's. Alex Craig, man from my own heart, not just because he gave away the penalty, but the fact that he's played at Gloucester and he's Scottish. Again, difficult one for Gloucester, right?
You're blaming him?
No, I'm not.
Why are you being horrible?
I'm not. I might sound like I'm being horrible now, but the one thing that stands out for me was when Jamal Ford-Robinson, the TikTok star, the cornerstone of your scrum, does an Alan Shearer coming out the scrum. I don't know whether I wanted to cringe, turn the TV off, or clap my hands. I couldn't work out what the emotions
which
were.
one?
But I can tell you which one it was. I was cringing. That's what I thought.
Well, I think a couple of scrums later.
Who's he pointing
to? I don't know, but I think a couple of scrums later he gets absolutely bent in half, doesn't he?
I did think that. I was going to say that scrum there, you've just seen what you found out yourself what you've had for dinner, even though you would have known, you could have seen it.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite interesting, isn't it? Because you listen to the DORs, and Andy Ray, you asked the question there, did the news have an effect on those games? Well, Bath, there's absolutely no fear for them now around getting relegated. When you get dragged into that battle, and it was going to be a 3-team battle at the bottom between Bath, Worcester and Gloucester, potentially to see who would have got relegated. Bath were pretty free. They're an attacking team. And coaches, for me, anyone looking at interviews over the weekend, George Skivington, love Skivs, good bloke. He was a hard player when he played, not as hard as Jim, but he put it about for every team he played for. He was like, no, it changes nothing. Of course it does, pal. You're bottom of the league, mate. And, I'm not putting pressure on or saying things for the sake of it. It, of course, changes everyone's mindset. And you compare that and contrast that to Jonathan Thomas's interview on Sunday before the Worcester Wasps game, where Worcester are equally were in the relegation battle until the announcement got made. He's like, yeah, it changes things. It takes a lot of pressure off. We can think more long term now. It's just honest, right? So, of course, it changes everyone's decision making around preparation, match to match to match, targeting games to win. So now there's no pressure of finishing bottom because there's no consequence. What you don't want is that to always be the case. And I'm desperate to see promotion and relegation come back in from next year if the world goes back to normal.
Quince, 3 on the trot.
Fair play, 3 from 3. things are going their way. Joe Marler didn't play for England, so he's playing. That makes a big difference to him as well. Danny Care's found a bit of form. Mike Brown's found some form. It can only be the players that didn't want to play for Guzzi, right? And you said it yourself, Jim. If they're consistently good now, you question their desire before Guzzi left, and were they doing right by the jersey, or did they just want a bit of player power to get him out? So
I ain't answering that. I'll leave that rhetorical question just for you, for the masses.
Yeah. So fair play though. 3 from 3 since Guzzi left. They're obviously playing with a bit of a swagger. They beat Bath away last week. Bath aren't particularly great at the minute. They beat Tigers at home this week. Again, Tigers aren't great at the minute. But fair play to them. They dominated Wasps 3 weeks ago, and Wasps have been in a rut as well. So you just tip your slipper to them, and I think they're in the top 4 now, aren't they?
Wasps are out of that rut now, though, aren't they, Goody?
Yeah, I mean, it was a 2-game rut. It was a performance that, obviously Tom Willis's try was a big barnstorming finish.
He got out of the match as well, didn't he?
Yeah, he did. Played really well.
Back of that try, and he saw the highlights.
Yeah, mate, he carried exceptionally well. He's hard. He's really hard. And obviously, coming off the back of the news of his brother and seeing what happened to him the day before, that would have been tough. And, people have talked about it till the cows come home already. But, Wasps, they were the masters of their own downfall against Northampton last week, severely off the pace the week before against Quins, and played some reasonable stuff at times in very tough conditions at Worcester. And were kind of hanging on a little bit towards the end to keep the victory when they perhaps should have kicked on and won it a bit more comfortably. But fair play, Worcester had a bit of fight. Still no Chris Ashton, though. Is Ashley even there?
He's probably going to leave next week.
But yeah, Wasps needed a win. They got it. Parts of it weren't pretty, but the weather dictated how they played. And I thought Atkinson played really well at 10. Jacob Uminger then came on as well and did a reasonable job to close out the game. Wasps have got a lot of players missing, and it was a good away victory.
Well, the riddle's been bringing us a little bit of joy at the moment, isn't it, Jim? And we've got one this week, haven't we?
We have. It's been on pause for the last couple of weeks, but I feel that my negative vibe that might have been coming off through the social media channels, even a little bit on here, that we need to bring up the mood. Scotland lost at the weekend. It's not about Scotland all the time, but it's about the listeners and cheering them up and giving them what they want. Lads, it's riddle me this. Carol, it's riddle me that. Jim will solve it. We will see.
In 2 years, I know I'll be twice as old as 5 years ago, said Tom. How old is Tom?
All right, okay, let me have some time to think, because these are the really hard ones that I struggle with. In 2 years, does it matter if it's in 2 years' time? It does, because it'll be 2 years older. I'll be twice as old as 5 years ago. Well, how old is he at the start? Like, surely we need to know how old he is, do we not?
There is a formula for this in maths, but
how old is Tom or John? How old is he to start with? How old is he now?
Well, that's the answer, isn't it? The answer is.
Oh, yeah, of course it says how old is he? Right, so in 2 years old now, I'll be twice as old as 5 years ago. So it's a number that you can double easily, so it's not going to be like
getting there.
A 12 and a half or something. Hang on. Right, I've nearly got it. Something triggered in my brain there.
Yeah, read it again.
So in 2 years, that bit's irrelevant, I think. Until the end.
Until the end, yeah, correct.
Until the end. I'll be twice as old as 5 years ago. Right. So 5 years ago, in 2 years, he'll know. 14.
Close.
I just
but that was a guess.
I just threw a guess out. So I'm thinking he's 5.
Well, he's not 5.
Plus 5.
Right.
Is 10.
Yeah.
So he's 12.
Hey!
I got it.
You got it, Jim.
Lads, I'm just throwing numbers out there. Thank you very much. I wouldn't have put Tom at 12 when I initially read it. I thought he was going to be 42 or something. But lads, I just solved it. Riddle me this. Riddle me that, Carol. Are you still on holiday? You look great on social. Seen a few pictures and tweets. Jim just solved it. Bilbao.
Right, well, let's finish things off with the good, the bad, and the ugly, which is brought to you by the helpful guys at Suns, who are helping men with one of the key issues that often gets overlooked: how to keep your hair. They're a men's health brand that offers a range of licensed and medically proven products for preventing and treating hair loss, as well as free online consultations with GPs, and they deliver via a monthly or 3 monthly subscription direct to your door. It's reasonably priced with no contract or hidden charges, and most importantly, they get results in 9 out of 10 men. So just visit suns.co.uk and use the code rugbypod20 to get 20 quid off your first order. That's sons.co.uk, and the code is rugbypod20.
Yeah, loads of good as ever around the world of rugby. And we're going to start off in Wales, Jim. We are, but not with the national team. Not yet, anyway, James. Not yet. Ellis Jenkins, and we mentioned him earlier. We mentioned knee injuries earlier. Hell of a player. He scored a try and come back from injury after 812 days out. 812 days. A phenomenally long time out of the game. Cardiff Blues played a friendly over the Ospreys. Great to see him back, especially at the time when you see such a horrific injury to a fellow back row star in Jack Willis. So massive tip of the slipper to Ellis Jenkins. We're going to put Dan Cole in the good this week, James.
What did he do? Hair grow back?
No.
I know what he did.
They did get humped by Quins, but Steve Borthwick said there's a lot of steel in the team. But Coley, tip of the slipper, 250th appearance for Leicester Tigers at the weekend. I was going to say a one-club man, but he did play at Bedford on loan for a little while. And Nottingham, yes. But yeah, a hell of a stalwart for that club. So 250 games for the Tigers. Well done, Coley. What else was good? Well, we've got to mention them, haven't we, Jim? Wasps, back on the horse, mate.
Oh, of course we do.
Back on the horse. And Tom Willis with a barnstorming performance. They get the victory down at Worcester Warriors, another old club of mine, actually. So, yeah, we've got two in there. What else was good? Tom Dunn, mentioned it earlier. Ain't the best looking bloke, is he? In fact, he's up there with some of the not best looking blokes in the league. But my God, he can tackle. My God, he can carry. Ridiculous stats at the weekend. 34 tackles for Bath against Sale in Bath's victory up there, which many people wouldn't have expected them to get, but he was a massive part of that. So well done, Tom. He equalled Jack Berger's record against Exeter in 2013. Do you play in that game, Jim?
Did we win?
Well, I don't know, but what I'm saying is Jack Berger made 34 tackles.
I probably did then. He probably did.
He made your tackles, didn't he?
He did, yeah, he did.
He must have made your tackles in that game as well. So anyway, well done to Tom Dunn and all the Bath boys. No relegation this week for them. Not involved in a relegation scrap, but they win away at Sale. So they've been the bad. Now they're in the good. What else is good? Let's go up to Scotland, Jim.
Where are we going? Kicking game?
Well, we're going Stuart Ogg. We're just going to get him in the good because he is on fire at the minute. 2 tries, played exceptionally well again. He scored a wonderful try to put Scotland back ahead, and I thought that could have been the winning try. For me, he's up there. I said he's the second best player in the world at the minute, but then I forgot about Cheslin Colby, who's still tearing it up for Toulouse.
His try at the weekend.
Ridiculous.
I saw that. I don't know who watched French rugby, but I saw that.
So Hoggy, I'm going to demote you a little bit. I'm going to say you're in the top 3 players in the world at the minute. He's playing exceptionally well, so we'll give him a tip of the slipper. And he got 2 tries at the weekend. Top performance. We'll stay in Scotland, Jim, and we'll stay with Wales. Owen Watkins tackle. The old tap tackle. Pulled it out, won them the game at the end. A fantastic bit of graft to get back, and then last-ditch tap tackle on Van der Merwe. Ridiculous skills from him. Ridiculous work rate. Deserves a full tip of the slipper to that one.
Proper. One of the best tackles I've seen for a long time.
Very good from him. We're going to just nip over to France. And we're not going to talk about the national team quite yet. We're going to talk about La Rochelle. Going down to Toulon and spanking Toulon at the Stade Félix Mayol. La Rochelle looked proper this year. So
was Evan playing? Evan Esteban. No word of a lie. Me and him were texting in bed the other night. It was very weird.
What, next to each other, or because that's breaking COVID?
No, you're not allowed because of China. But the weirdest thing was we were texting each other. We said, "I'm off to sleep now." I said, "All right, night." Genuinely.
Yeah, well, let's just say he played and he was distracted by your text messaging, Jim. So it's your fault.
My fault. I'll take it.
But tip of the slipper to La Rochelle. And we'll go back to France, but over to Ireland, the French national team. A hell of a performance at times. Showed some tough attitude in defence and big work rate as well. towards the back end of the game, getting their first victory in Dublin for 10 years, led by Shaun Edwards on top, dancing away in the changing rooms and all the boys. Just learn the words, though, next time. If you're going to come to Twickenham and try and do that, and if you win, just please learn the words, boys. But
what song was it? What song was it again? Maybe give a
Free
line.
from desire.
Oh, yeah. Free from desire. Money, chicken fire. Free from desire.
If anyone knows the words.
Tell Ibiza, I'll learn the words, and I will do that in Ibiza, in my budgie smugglers, responsibly with a pair of Birkenstocks on. Absolutely horrendous. My toes will still be mangled. But
nice. So well done to the French national team. But the good this week goes to one man and one team. Louis Rees-Zammit and his 2 tries to win the game against Scotland. Him and all the Welsh boys deserve their victory. They were written off by Jim Hamilton over the last 18 months.
Every week they turn up, every single week. Who am I?
There you go.
Bells gone.
There you go. You heard it here first, people. Jim Hamilton has said sorry to the whole of Wales. The Grand Slam dream is still on for them after beating Scotland. So the goo this week goes to Louis Rees-Zammit and his Welsh teammates. The bad. We'll start off with Ireland. A bit of bad luck for the first time ever that they've lost both of their first 2 games in the Six Nations. So unfortunate for them, not great, under a bit of pressure. But Big Faz, he'll listen to the pod. He'll keep his job and he'll bounce back with a big victory over in Italy, I'm sure, in round 3. What else was bad? What about the French doctor, Jean-Francois Chemin?
Oh, Chemin!
He was talking about Johnny Sexton having had 30 concussions in his career. What happened to the doctor-patient confidentiality?
Chemin, mate. Can't do it, mate. Can you? That's what happens with there are parts of the French that are still so French, aren't they?
Yeah, well, that
gives it. I joke about it with the song in the changing room. You see the physios coming on. The only physios, most of them come on in full PPE with triple masks. The French doctors come on, they've got the willies hanging out the top of the mask every time. That's them, isn't it?
Yeah, the French. That's just the way they roll. So, yeah, he has to get a mention, Jean-Francois Chemin, for basically saying Johnny Sexton's had 30 concussions in his career. Bang out of order. Don't be saying that. Unfortunately, the bad this week has to go, I'm afraid, to Jack Willis's injury. Sickening to see. Horrible for everyone that knows him. Anyone that's part of the England team, his family, Wasps obviously as well, who are going to miss him hugely when the Six Nations is over. Just wish him all the best in recovery. I hope the operation goes well if an operation is required. I'm sure he'll bounce back stronger, but horrible to see. And unfortunately, that gets the bad this week. Then the ugly. A few bits of ugly, actually. We're going to start with Motu Matu's tackle on Ian Whitten. That saw him get sent off. Poor Ian Whitten got absolutely smoked head on head. And again, it's the chest up, head forward tackle that World Rugby have been trying to outlaw for a long, long time. It's got to go out of the game. And Motu Matu, his tackle is definitely something that needs to be aired and looked at across the board, because Ian Whitten's a big old horse and he got properly sparkoed. Other bits of ugly. Well, only one other thing to talk about, really. And it's 3 players that, as players, and we've seen it a lot, right? We're lucky that we're doing this job at the minute, Jim, being able to get on the podcast every week, talk about rugby, talk about Bush, talk about whatever we want to talk about. And it's a privilege to do it. When you're a professional rugby player and you're living, and these COVID rules are tough for everyone, but you're living and you agree to live in a certain way around the regulations, and you know that you're going to get banned, you know you're going to get fined if you break them. Jonathan Joseph, Gabriel Ogre and Elliot Stooke, what are you doing? And then Elliot Stooke crashing your car pissed. I mean, I don't want to rub salt into wounds, but have a word with yourself. Not only are you breaking the COVID regs that everyone else is living by, you're then absolutely steaming, driving your car home, you crashed it, and what are you thinking? Professional rugby player, pal.
Thanks, Goodey. Thanks, Jim. Thanks, producer Tim. And thank you very much for listening. Don't forget to hit subscribe on whatever platform you get your podcasts on. Leave us a review and check us out on YouTube as well.